Hey, Cypher here. Got another quick episode of Engaging Etymology here for you. This time, the word tycoon. The word tycoon normally has to do with someone of great wealth and power, like an important industrialist or a CEO. This is majorly different from the origin of it, though, but also incredibly similar in usage. Hold on, cause this is going to be a weird one. It comes from the Japanese word for great lord. It's a feudal term from the 19th century. The United States got it as quickly as we began to deal with the Japanese in the 1850s. It is therefore predominantly an American word, hence why Brits don't really use it that often in their own discourse. From the 1630s to 1855, Japan, under the leadership of the Tokugawa Shogunate, closed its borders to international trade, save for a single treaty port on an island in Nagasaki Bay, and that was only for the Portuguese. This cutting off of trade was an extreme form of isolationism. The period is called the Sekoku, which is Japanese for locked country. Now, they didn't cut off trade with Asian countries either, but that was a very small influence on the Japanese. They were so strict with the sakoku that they would execute people who happened to shipwreck on their coast or accidentally land. It was a major problem for shipping, since many sailors would have to pass the island in order to get to China. Japan happens to be in the way. As steamships began to be used more frequently, this imposed another problem, since no one could refuel with coal when passing, leading to more frequent incursions by Western powers. Beginning in the 18th century, various nations started sending envoys to try to negotiate with the shogun in order to make landfall and remove this dangerous isolationism. It's not as though the Japanese didn't have a vested interest in removing the sakoku either. A country in isolation has a serious economic problem. Without international trade, an economy will inevitably begin to stagnate, leading to unemployment and limited innovation. That is precisely what happened in Japan by the end of the late 18th century. They stuck to their guns, though. Which, by the way, is a big misconception about Japanese warfare. There's this myth that samurai did not use guns, which is incorrect. Starting in the late 16th century, gunpowder weapons were used in war and were in fact a key part of the unification of Japan called the Sengoku period. The Tokugawa came to power thanks to their arquebusiers. The myth comes from the fact that sakoku was imposed and the samurai did not really have guns made locally, and therefore they became a rare commodity in Japan during its isolation, especially when the Tokugawa decided to limit gun manufacture altogether. Back to sticking with their guns, try as the West might, the shogun refused to allow trade beyond the limitations already set. There were at least 20 attempts to open the border, including one by the US in 1846 under the command of Captain Biddle, before it finally changed. The US in 1853 sent a flotilla under the command of Commodore Perry. This flotilla is known as the Black Ships in Japan because of the smoke they produced from the coal-powered steam engines. It was a whole group of the most modern warships available at the time. Perry showed off the cannons in Edo Bay, now called Tokyo Bay, in order to intimidate the shogun into giving way. But the shogun didn't budge, and Perry would have to return. The following year, Perry came back with a bigger fleet, and Shogun Tokugawa Hideyoshi yielded to him. During what is now called the Convention of Kanagawa, they came to a treaty for trade, extraterritoriality, and the establishment of embassies. Sekoku was over, and other Western nations quickly followed suit. So, what does all this have to do with the word tycoon? Well, the shogunate, aka Bakufu, was in a strange position. Japan has an emperor, even to this day, but much like now, he occupied a largely ceremonial position. The shoguns held the real power in Japan from about 1192 until 1867. Though the emperor was technically in charge, the shogun really was the one in power. Because of this oddity, the word shogun would have been translated into English as general, and bakufu as tent resider. The rank general is just not a good enough representation of what a shogun is. So the Japanese used a new term for shogun that would translate better. That word was tycoon. It was derived from the Chinese words tai, meaning great, and kun, meaning lord. They used Chinese because it was the language that both parties at the Kanagawa Convention could translate. That way, Perry could call the shogun Great Lord rather than General. It was purely for translation's sake. After that, the word quickly started being used in America, as early as 1861, including the modern misspelling of the original word. It took on its current meaning in the early 20th century, and that is how we got the word tycoon. There is a lot of history in everyday language. If you liked that, be sure to like and subscribe, and then check out my other Engaging Etymology episodes. I'll see you next time.